无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Hello everyone, welcome back to, this is class 29. Yes, welcome back to class 29 this week. Thank you for your patience because we did not have a class last week. And towards the end of today's class, I will explain why I received some unexpected news. Nothing bad, just unexpected, which required my attention elsewhere for a while. Okay, let's continue by reciting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life. Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one. 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 Hello everyone again. Let me end slideshow and share the slides for today. Today, we are still going to talk about food. If you are wondering why am I devoting so much time to food, well, did you eat today? Did you eat yesterday? Did you eat? Are you going to eat tomorrow? So most of the time, not most of the time, we spend a lot of time eating. We eat 3 times a day. Or some of us eat twice. Some of us eat once, like yours truly, monastics in Shr Fu's tradition, we eat once. But usually it is 2 to 3 times. So and normally when, okay, I won't, I'll speak just for myself. Normally when I eat, before I understood about the Dharma, my mind is very much on the food. Unless I'm distracted, then I'm thinking about something else. But eating is not a time of practice. So the more we know about the Dharma, the more you can understand or use the opportunity of eating instead of creating more karmic seeds that just bring you back to rebirth over and over again. What we can do, if you want to, is we can find out how we can use the time that we are eating to actually practice instead. So today, what I have are some slides about Like this one you see in front of you is called the Mata. Let me see if I can say it right. Matakabhatta Jataka. This is from the Jataka tales. It is in English translation would be the goat that laugh and wept. That means the goat that can cry and laugh at the same time. So we have this Jataka tale, and then I have a few things about Shr Fu say about food, and then I have some extreme practice. How would I say? Extreme perspective on if people are really interested in, say, you want to really go to the Pure Land, and you find yourself still somewhat attached to food, you know, because it's normal. It's very normal to want to eat something that's nice, and for a lot of us, how would I say, food is kind of like the only time that you can have a good time, you know. And but on the other hand, some of us really want to go to the Pure Land, you know. So how do we balance our current habits of, you know, enjoying food, and then at the same time balancing our desires and making sure that trying to maximize our opportunities to get to the Pure Land. So towards the end, I have some instructions about that how the Buddha taught left home people. So it's a pretty extreme case because the Buddha is teaching left home people, but it can be how you say, it can be practiced by anyone who is interested. Okay, all right, let's get going. So I'm going to put my palms together and read this. Wait, let me see. Yes, I will do that since this is from the Buddha himself. So I'm going to read it out. It says, one day while the Buddha was staying in Jetavana, some bhikkhus asked him if there was any benefit in sacrificing goats, sheep, and other animals as offerings for departed relatives. No, bhikkhus, replied the Buddha. No good ever comes from taking life, not even when it is for the purpose of providing a feast for the dead. So then the Buddha told this story. Yeah, so not just right now, but before, during the Buddha's time, this practice has endured where not just for offering to the dead, you know, for your relatives. Like I remember Cheng Meng. In Hokkien, we call it Cheng Meng. I'm not sure how you say it in Chinese. Cheng Beng. How do you say it in Chinese? Anyone wants to help? That's the 15. That's when you go to your ancestors' graves. Yes, Peggy?
Qingming.
Qingming. Okay, thank you. That's when you go to your ancestors' graves and you clean it up. My grandfather's grave had a lot of what we do is you cut the grass, you bring shovels to shovel the dirt, and then we also bring paint and a paintbrush, and then one of my cousins would refill in the paint on the tombstone. Yeah, and then back then we didn't know, and because my second uncle on my father's side and my second auntie would handle the offerings, so part of the offerings we would have chicken, pork, and other meat dishes as well. Okay, so this is what that's about, you know, making this kind of offerings. Also, you can say that when celebrations, when you want to celebrate something, and like when I was born, I told the story a few weeks ago when I was born, and my father, we had a party. It was a full moon party. For Chinese people, when your baby is born, and the full moon, not full moon, is it full moon? When 30 days after, does anyone know what's the exact name for it?
满月.
What is that in English? Is it full moon?
No, it's 1 month old.
1 month old. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So, thank you, Peggy. So 1 month old, and then you have a party, and that was when someone brought a suckling pig was a suckling pig. There's a roasted piglet, a baby pig. And my mom thought that was very inappropriate. Yeah. Okay, so back to the Jataka tale. Okay, so what's the story? The Buddha said, long, long ago, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Varanasi, Brahmadatta was, I think, a king. A Brahman decided to offer a feast for the dead and bought a goat to sacrifice. So what is a Brahman? I think here you can interpret that as a priest, like a Hindu priest. He says, my boys, he says to his students, take this goat down to the river, bathe it, brush it, hang a garland around its neck, give it some grain to eat and bring it back. So that's when you treat a goat really nicely. Why? Because you know you're going to kill it as an offering. So you want to make it clean. You even decorate the goat with a garland of flowers. You know, you feed the goat and then you bring it back. So, yes, sir, they replied and led the goat to the river. While they were grooming it, the goat started to laugh with a sound like a pot smashing. Then, just as strangely, it started to weep loudly. Okay. So that's a very strange occurrence. So it says the young students were amazed by this behavior. It says, why did you suddenly laugh? They asked the goat. And why do you now cry so loudly? Okay, I find this very unusual because I think normal people, if they hear a goat laugh and cry, they would run away. I know I would. But in this story, the students didn't run away. They actually, like it was a normal thing for a goat, they actually talked to the goat. So the goat replied. The goat said, repeat your question when we get back to your teacher, the goat answered. Now, at this time, I would have run away again, but they did not. So the students hurriedly took the goat back to their master and told him what had happened at the river. Hearing the story, the master himself asked the goat why it had laughed and why it had wept. So the goat answered, he says, in past times, Brahman, I was a Brahman who taught the Vedas like you. I too sacrificed a goat as an offering for a feast of the dead, for the dead. Because of killing that single goat, I have had my head cut off 499 times. I laugh aloud when I realize that this is my last birth as an animal to be sacrificed. Today I will be freed from my misery. On the other hand, I cried when I realized that because of killing me, you too may be doomed to lose your head 500 times. It was out of pity for you that I cried. Okay, so the goat, this goat could remember his past offense. Well, goat, said the Brahman, in that case, I am not going to kill you. Brahman, exclaimed the goat, whether or not you kill me, I cannot escape death today. Don't worry, the Brahman assured the goat. I will guide you. You know, the Brahman seems to be really confident. The Brahman doesn't understand cause and effect at all, as you can see from this story. But, you know, in his ignorance, he is still really confident that he can protect the goat. So the goat says, you don't understand. Your protection is weak. The force of my evil deed is very strong. Like Shr Fu says, karma is never off by one bit. So the Brahman untied the goat and said to his students, don't allow anyone to harm this goat. So they obediently followed the animal to protect it. After the goat was freed, it began to graze. It stretched out its neck to reach the leaves on a bush, growing near the top of a large rock. At that very instant, a lightning bolt hit the rock, breaking off a sharp piece of stone which flew through the air and neatly cut off the goat's head. A crowd of people gathered around the dead goat and began to talk excitedly about the amazing accident. So it's a lightning strike. Who can predict a lightning strike? So a tree deva had observed everything from the goat's purchase to its dramatic death, and drawing a lesson from the incident, admonished the crowd. If people only knew that the penalty would be rebirth into sorrow, they would cease from taking life. A horrible doom awaits one who slays. With this explanation of the law of karma, that the deva instilled in his With this explanation of the law of karma, the deva instilled in his listeners the fear of hell. The people were so frightened that they completely gave up the practice of animal sacrifices. The deva further instructed the people in the precepts, and urged them to do good. Then the Buddha said, eventually that Deva passed away to fare according to his deserts, meaning if the Deva was good, then the result would be good. For several generations after that, people remained faithful to the precepts and spent their lives in charity and meritorious works, so that many were reborn in the heavens. So the Buddha ended his lesson and identified the birth by saying, in those days, I was that Deva. So this is the Buddha recounting his one of his past lives. Yeah. So, yep. So when it comes to food, we have to be really, it's not just sacrifices of animals for the dead. It is basically doing anything that is harmful to any living being. Okay. All right. So next slide is called the Sana Sutta, or the Sutta on Perceptions. The Buddha says that the perception of loathsomeness in food, when developed and pursued, is of great fruit, of great benefit. It gains a footing in the deathless, has the deathless as its final end. So what the Buddha is trying to say is that if you actually take a full picture of food. Right now, how we look at food is through the way we look at food right now increases our desires. It's very normal. We have been, since young until present moment, we look at food as a pleasurable thing. We want the different tastes, the different textures, the different sensations that the food provides. And we only stick to that point of view because sometimes having a full picture is makes life not so fun. I think that's the best way to put it. It takes the pleasure out of a lot of things. And for a lot of people, taking the pleasure out of food is a bit extreme. And this reminds me of a story when I was a Sami. That means I was a novice monk. Okay, let me see. Dharma Master JinHe, would you please show again the first slide of the goat that laughed? Okay, all right, let me, before we go back too many slides. Okay, Julie, is this what you need? First slide of the goat that laughed and wept, okay? All right, if you need more, let me know. You can WhatsApp me, I can email this to you. I can WhatsApp to you. Okay, where were we? Okay, so I was on my, okay, this story. So we were novice monks. There were quite a few of us. I think there were a total of 12 of us. And then Dharma Master Jin Yong Shi, many of you know him at CDTB. Okay, Julie, I'll send it to you through WhatsApp. I think that would be easier. So he took us to where there was an exhibition called Bodyworks. What is Bodyworks? Bodyworks is done by a German scientist. He takes the bodies of people who have died, the cadavers, and through a process called plastinization, he injects a solution like silicone through into the bodies of people. So what this solution does is that he can how's the best way? It's like you use the human body as a mold, and then you inject, like you want to make jelly, and then you have different molds. So what he does is he can inject the thing into blood vessels and extract them out. So the only thing left is blood vessels. And he has full bodies that shows all the muscles, all the internal organs, all the blood vessels in full color. Yeah, you can look it up online. It's called Bodyworks, BODYWERKS. And so we went to this exhibition because it's good for monks to contemplate the body. That's one of our practices. And there was a video that was showing is a hall. It's like a mini theater, mini cinema. You walk in, and then the lights dim, and then they show this movie. And this movie is, they put a camera into someone's body, and it goes into the stomach. It goes into where the camera can go to show you what happens inside the body, which we never get to see. You know, you have to imagine what happens in your stomach when you eat the food. So during that time, there were sitting behind us were a lot of young girls, and when the camera was going in through the throat, it went through the I'm not sure what happened, but it went into the stomach, and it was showing what was happening in the stomach. And one of the girls behind me said, "Ew, enough." It says, what did she say? She says, "I don't need to know this." Yeah, he says, "I don't need to know this. Enough. I don't have to know this." So basically, that's how we treat food. We look at the good side, but we don't want to know the reality of what happens. Okay, so this slide here, the simile of the sun's flesh. How is physical food to be regarded? This is from something called the Putta Mansa Sutta, and which is the sun's flesh. Okay, before I explain this sutta, I have to make it really, really clear. Okay, the Buddha is not asking the monks to contemplate this. When the Buddha talked about this sutra, the Buddha was making a point. He was trying to make the point that you actually someone how you say, you are able to approach food in a way that does not increase your desire. So after he said this, he gave a different set of instructions on how, on what monks can do to contemplate the food that is eaten. Okay, but first he wanted to prove a point, the point that you can actually eat something and have the correct mindset that is not based on desire at all. Okay, all right. And one of the mindsets is what we do when you come to the monastery and you eat. We say we regard the food as medicine. That's one of the mindsets, but not from this simile. Okay. Okay, what is this simile all about? All right. The Buddha says that imagine there's a couple with a young child, and they go on a long journey, and they find themselves in the middle of the desert, and they have no more food, and they have no more drink, and they are on the brink of death. They are going to die, and they know they're going to die, and they're really feeble, and they know they cannot survive another day. So the husband turns to the wife and tells the wife, she says that, "I have failed you as a husband. I have not been able to protect you and perform my husband duties." Says, "I'm totally of no use at all. So in that case, why don't you kill me and survive on my flesh? You and my child can survive on my flesh, and then you can continue on your journey." Then the wife turned to the husband and said, "Well, I too have failed you as a wife, and why don't you kill me, and you and my son, you and my child survive on my flesh instead?" So they started, like trying to argue, but they were too weak to argue as well. And they realized that, then they remembered their son. Then they said, how about, then the husband actually told the wife. The husband said, "No, if anything happens to you, who's going to take care of the child? I cannot take care of the child. A child needs the mother." So they realized they were stalemate, Then they had an idea about why don't they eat the child instead? And if they survive, then they can always have another child. After all, the child was really young. So they agreed on this. Okay, this is not a real story. This is a hypothetical situation that the Buddha was telling the monks to make a point. Okay, so the mother called the child and said, okay, child, go to your father. He has something to tell you. So the child went to the father. And then when the child came, the father said, oh, this is my own son, you know, from the result from me and my wife. And we have taken so much, I have, you know, worked so hard in order to bring up my son, and I sacrificed so much for my son. How am I able to kill my son? So I can't do that. So he said, he told the son, he said, okay, why don't you go to your mom? She has something to tell you instead. So the child walked all the way to the mom. And then when the child came to the mom said, you know, I sacrificed so much to have this child. He came from my own body, you know, all the pains and all the suffering and endured bearing this child in my womb. How can I kill my own son? So she felt like the husband and said, you know, how can we kill our son? So she said, dear child, go back to your father. You know, he has something to tell you. So the poor child be already, you know, almost dying, just like the parents, and then having to walk back and forth from the mother to the from the father to the mother, and now from the mother to the father. As the child walked back to the father, he died. So he didn't have to be killed, he actually died. So because the son died naturally, then the parents began to take the meat from the son and begin to eat it. So the Buddha asked the monks, the Buddha said, when how you say, when they were taking the how would they feel? How would this couple feel as they were eating the meat? So the Buddha said, this food of the sun's flesh is loathsome. That means it's repulsive for 9 reasons, and it will not be eaten for pleasure and enjoyment. It wouldn't be eaten for them to want to feel like they are beautifying the body, but only for one reason, is so that they can survive and get out of the desert. So the Buddha gave 9 reasons and said that because it was the same flesh as human and it was their son, they would, how you say, they won't eat it with pleasure. There will be zero greediness for it, but they would eat it in a way that was very detached. So totally no desire, no lust. So that's one. And then the second way they will eat it is that they won't have in their minds that, oh, this is better than this. I remember growing up in my house, before we became vegetarians, if we had a chicken, like a roast chicken, or a whole chicken, and then, you know, my father would have his favorite, I would have my favorite, and, you know, but the Buddha said, no, these parents, when you eat something like this, you don't pick and choose. You don't have like say, oh, this is better than this. And then the third thing is, neither would they eat until they're really full. They will just eat. They will eat just enough to sustain themselves so that they can live another day. And then as they're eating, they wouldn't feel like the other person is eating more and get jealous, you know, or like, oh, you took a bigger piece than me. That's not fair. You know, they wouldn't argue about things like that. And as they ate it, they would be very aware of what they're eating. They're not confused, like, oh, and get lost in the flavors. This is number 5. And then number 6, as they're eating, they wouldn't have the thought of, oh, this is such a a rare dish, we hope that we can eat this again. You know, sometimes when you find something that's really nice to eat, immediately you think about how you can eat it again. You don't have this kind of thoughts. And number 7, they won't eat with the thought of, oh, this is so good, let's keep some so that when we get out of the desert, we can cook it properly or add more spices and make it taste better. They did not have any kind of those thoughts. And then number 8, they did not have any thoughts that like they were really special, like only they could enjoy this kind of meat, and it's so rare, it's a delicacy. This is very normal for people. You know, when you eat a special dish or something that's really hard to come by, something really rare, like endangered animals, or something that that's really, really hard to cook, takes a long time to cook. You know, we get so happy and so proud of ourselves. The Buddha says, no, they won't feel like that. And so on. Yeah. And they wouldn't quarrel. You know, like I said, they wouldn't feel selfish. Number 10, the Buddha said they won't quarrel, like, this is your share, this is my share, you only take your share. So after the Buddha said this, his point was proven to the monks that there is a way that you can approach food, you know, that does not increase any desires. Okay. So instead, then the Buddha talked about how monks or people, if you choose to, how you can approach the eating food. Okay, just let me drink some water. Okay, excuse me. All right. So one thing the monks can contemplate about food is how inconvenient it is. That's number 1. For example, it's from morning, you have to, from waking up, you already think, oh, today I have to go up to the temple to get food. This is for, this applies to more of Theravada monks, where they have to go on alms round to get the food. So they have to contemplate about leaving their, the comfort of their bed. That's number 1. And then secondly, having to step on the floor, which is not clean. And then from the floor of their room, they have to step out, which is more dirty. And then eventually from the temple grounds, they have to go out into the city, and then they have to contemplate about how from such a nice, peaceful, tranquil, it's so nice and peaceful and tranquil inside the temple, you have to go to the dirty city. And then as you walk in the streets, you will see like dead animals, you see all kinds of things like dirt water, you know, everything so dirty, there's water and there's mud and everything. And it makes the monastery as lovely as peacock's feathers. And then, and then to do that, you also have to put on your clothes. It's like trying to hide something that you don't want people to see. And then streets, Buddha talked about like having animals in the streets, which can be dangerous. You can be bitten by a dog, or you can be attacked by a cow, or hit by a car. Yeah, hit by a car. And then as you go from house to house, sometimes you're treated badly, sometimes you're ignored, sometimes you're given old food or food that has gone bad. These are the things that you have to endure. And then the process of eating itself, usually what monks do is you put all the food into your bowl, including desserts and soups and all that. Not every monk does this. I don't put like soup and dessert together. I used to, yeah, for many years. And when I was staying at CDTV, you put everything in the bowl, and then you just stir it all up. You know, you mix it all up, and then you just eat it. And so while eating, you contemplate about the good appearance of the food or spoiled, because why? You just mix it all up. It becomes a mass of mixed food. And I remember feeding, we used to have a pet dog, and that is how we used to feed the dog. We just put everything in the bowl, mash it all up, and let the dog eat. And then we contemplate about how the food is mixed in the mouth and with the saliva. And okay, remember the warning I gave to to you today about what to expect? Yes. So this is where it all comes in. So there's bile, there's phlegm, there's spit and mucus. This is when it goes down the throat and goes into the stomach. And then it says it goes into a place, meaning the stomach, which has never been washed or cleaned from the day you were born. I've never thought about that before. Our stomach has never been washed or cleaned forever. The longer you're alive, the more dirty it becomes. And then it has to be digested, and then it turns into excrement. And then from there, it comes out or turns into your hair, your nails, your teeth. And it causes you, not only does it nourish your body, but at the same time, it has the potential to make you itchy if you're allergic. Sometimes it makes you cough. Sometimes it makes you sick. So when you think about all this, then you realize that, oh, it's such a bother when it comes to food. So the Buddha said, he nourishes himself with nutriment without vanity and only for the purpose of crossing over suffering, as one who seeks to cross over the desert eats his own child's flesh. Says, then his greed for the five chords of sense desires comes to be fully understood without difficulty by means of the full understanding of the physical nutriment. So if you choose to, food can be a Dharma door. By the Buddha giving us the example of the sun's simile, that really extreme approach to food, that becomes a mirror for how we approach food by ourselves. So let me make this clear. This is not a practice that you have to do. Okay? I'm only introducing this perspective because most of us don't, it has never crossed our minds that when we eat, we can actually use that opportunity to practice. So for some of us, if your vow to be reborn in the pure land is really, really sincere, and that's all you want, and you how you say, to the extent that when you find out, oh, there's a way I can deal with food so that I don't increase my desires, but at the very least be aware of what goes on in my mind when I eat, then this is one practice that you can follow. Okay, you got that? Does anyone have any questions before we proceed? Anyone? Okay, yes, Sue?
I put up the questions in the chat box.
Okay, let me read it.
Okay.
Okay, you want to say it? Why don't you say it? Yeah.
Basically, we plan for our meal. Because it's normal. You need to plan what you're going to cook. You need to go to market and buy things like that.
Yes.
All this planning process, all things that we need to get ready for the food. We are actually, greed for food. We are actually, we cannot have the practice that Buddha is telling us, have loathsome towards the food. I mean, it's hard, Father.
Okay, that's why I say this is not a practice for everyone. Okay, I can't tell you what you should do, but I can tell you what I do, because in the monastery on certain days now, with it started a few months ago with a restriction on travel, and so we had to prepare to our own food, and also to be respectful of some of the donors who were afraid of leaving their houses. So I have to cook and I have to plan, because on some days we have people bringing food. On some days I have to prepare the food, and I have to think about leftovers or food that's going to go bad, like fresh vegetables, and figuring out how to do it. So what I do is, first, I concentrate on being able to make offerings to the Buddha as well as making offerings to my fellow monks. So that is where I divert my attention to. And then the second one is after doing like the classes from the last few classes, after learning for myself about offering food for, I look forward to being able to transfer the merit to my relatives. And then the third one is when I am cooking the food, I am careful to balance between not, how you say, my own desires for food that's good and tasty, and does it come from a place of happiness where I do it because I want to make sure that my fellow monks are well fed and well nourished, or is it coming from a selfish place where I am the one who wants to eat it? You know, so I think the whole point of the practice is it makes you aware of what goes on in your heart and in your mind first. First, you have to be aware of what's happening, and then from that point, it's different for everyone. For some people, they are not ready for this practice. Then, like I said, this is not a practice for everyone. Contemplating the food, how you say, the repulsiveness of the food is a practice for monks and nuns, for monastics. And the Buddha himself didn't ask the monks and nuns to contemplate that you're eating the flesh of your child. He just did that to make a point. For people who are, how you say, who are so enmeshed into the food itself. Because for monks, we don't have a lot of things to, like for myself, when we underwent training as lay people, and then when we became novice monks and even monks in the first few years, because there are so many things that you do not have to occupy your mind for your desires to latch onto, food becomes a really big thing. You really, the mind really looks forward to that one meal of the day. And so that's why the Buddha has these instructions for left-home people. And that's why the only possessions we have for monks traditionally are our clothes, our bowl, and the food that we eat. So our precepts have a lot to do with how mentally and physically we approach those things. Yeah. So yes.
Sorry. May I ask, when Fasher says when you do the preparations of the food for the fellow monks and things like that, you make transference, dedications. When does Fasher do that? After they finish cooking, or when you make offerings, or after food?
I think your intention has to be there from the beginning. So like, I don't buy the vegetables, but I assume for someone who leads a normal life, you know, when you go out and you're buying, and you can, you know, instead of selecting the things that only you want to eat, you can select things that other people, like your people in your household, like to eat as well. So your intention already begins there. So the moment you engage, when you plan, for example, like what dishes you want to cook, you know, when you like you say, when you plan out for the week, that's when the intention arises. And if you have the intention throughout the whole thing, then the transference comes all the time. Because every time you're doing something, you're never doing it for yourself. You're always doing it in consideration of other people. But if you want to have a official transference, like you want to, all those spirits of your intention of others, you want to bring it to a point where it really helps you concentrate, then you can do it at the end. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a normal practice to do the transference at the end, say after you serve the food. But if you don't have the intention from the beginning, the middle, and the end, then there's nothing much to transfer at all at the end. You understand?
Yes, Pastor Amitabha, thank you very much. Very enlightening. Amitabha.
Okay, yeah, so we do what we can. For people who food is still important, it's okay. That's fine. The Buddha is saying, you have to do this. No, the Buddha is just giving us a different way to look at things. And then for monks like myself, I have to look at why don't I see food in that way? You know, why do I still have desires for food? And then I work on it every time we eat. So for people who are interested, you know, there are different ways, like the 5 contemplations we do in a monastery when we eat. Usually when I eat, I'm reciting. Right now, I'm in the habit of reciting Medicine Master Buddha's mantra. So that's what I do. I used to recite Great Compassion mantra. So it helps at the very least not reinforce the desires that we are bringing as we eat. Okay, so Julie says, my experience in GCDR, I learned in preparing food, mindful of having 5 colors and ensuring it has at least 1 protein, 1 carbohydrate, 1 greens, 1 potato dish, and 1 soup to cover taste of Eastern and Western palate. Yes, in GCDR, they have both, they have Asians as well as Westerners who come. So the cooks there have to make sure that they're able to satisfy everyone, because food is really important. Food, if you do it well, food can be a gateway to the Dharma, which is what the monks and nuns in Malaysia do. They really promote vegetarian food, and they really want tasty vegetarian food, not because they're greedy for the flavors, but because if you can attract people through food, then the door stays open for them to learn the Dharma. So like Lin says, teaching is an expedient to restrain the mind dwelling on food. Yes, but you can also use food as an expedient. So it doesn't mean that you have to cook plain food for everyone. That's not the point. The point is in the mind, okay? What are you doing in your own mind, in your own practice? Okay, so just to set the record straight, in Malaysia, the monks and nuns really place a lot of importance on making delicious food for the public, not for themselves. I am pretty sure they don't care if they, you know, if they just eat plain food all the time, it wouldn't matter to them. But they understand the importance of food as an expedient to bring people to the Dharma. Okay, all right. So let's see what we have in the next slide. This is from Shr Fu. Okay, this is pretty relevant for today's time. Shr Fu says that abnormal changes in the climate and the seasons are omens of future events. Mental illness is a form of abnormality in people. When the climate is mentally ill, that's not a good sign. She says, in this time when diseases and calamities are occurring everywhere, we must apply ourselves diligently to cultivation in order to transform violence and disasters into peace and auspiciousness. So we are very aware right now, the weather is different. Things are very different right now in terms of the weather. We all know with this COVID-19 going on, and we have so many wildfires in the Amazon, in the United States. Things are just really, really abnormal. It is not normal at all. Okay, what else does Shr Fu say? Shr Fu says, if we fail to cultivate seriously, we tend to become psychologically unbalanced when the climate is abnormal, and then there will be problems. So Shr Fu is saying, if you don't know how to practice, when your external conditions like the climate is abnormal, then it affects you as well. Shr Fu says, therefore, during a period of great change, Buddhists should be especially diligent in their cultivation, reciting the Buddha's name more or reciting more mantras or sutras. We should do as many good deeds as possible, for great virtue can dispel offenses. In this time when things are not the way they usually are, we must adjust to conditions but not change yet adjust to conditions. Most importantly, we should not lose our tempers. Okay, so a lot of people are already doing this, which is really good. We have the started off by the Vietnamese community at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I think it was Go Chen, Go Hua sisters, and then I'm not sure who else because they haven't been coming to the monastery. But a bunch of them started reciting Tape Cho, the Great Compassion Mantra, and they made it into a thing. I don't know how many, I don't know if they're online, if they want to say how many people. We have all the names put up in our Buddha Hall in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. There are people all over the world right now sincerely reciting the Great Compassion Mantra, and they make a vow and they write down how many times they want to recite. So this is what Shr Fu is encouraging us to do, okay? So Shr Fu says, take a look around and you'll see natural and human calamities like floods, hurricanes, fires, and wars occurring everywhere. Fortunately, there is a way to turn this around, and it takes neither strength nor money. This method requires that everyone abstain from the flesh of living beings and eat only vegetarian food, and that they free creatures instead of killing them. If this can be done, then all the world's disasters will vanish. Therefore, adopting a vegetarian diet is very important. Calamities occur because the universe is filled with enmity generated by slaughter. If people can liberate creatures rather than killing them and eating their flesh, these tendencies towards violence will abate. Okay, so that's very clear. So Shr Fu talks about the character of meat. He says, which is, okay, I'm not going to try to say in Chinese because I don't know the tone. I know what that downward mark is, the diacritic, but I cannot say it. Anyone want to help me? How do you pronounce row?
Row.
Okay.
Row.
Say that again.
Row.
Row. Okay. Thank you, Miss Yap. Okay. So Shr Fu says, the Chinese character for meat, there are two people. Okay. So you see at the bottom, the character for people. Okay. It says the one inside has been caught by the one outside. And it says, if you think about it, isn't it just people eating people? So it says the Chinese character for meat is a pictogram of an open mouth. That's the square box. With two people, one inside, one outside. The one outside is trying to get in, and the one inside is trying to get out. It is trapped inside this pen of death. What's a pen? P-E-N. A pen of death is a cage where you keep animals in. It says this character depicts one person eating the flesh of another. The one eating the meat is on the outside, still in human form, while the one being eaten is trapped inside and has already turned into an animal. Even though the mouth is open, his escape is blocked by the person outside. The box could represent a sheep pen, a pig pen, or a cattle pen. So recently in our WhatsApp group, we had a very good discussion about actors. One of our members was curious about what the Buddha had to say about being an actor, and that sparked off a lot of discussion. And I think I remember Shr Fu saying something like, actors change costumes, you put on makeup, and then you take on a different role, but they're still the same person. But in our rounds of rebirth, like how Shr Fu just said, in our rounds of rebirth, we come back wearing different clothes, meaning we look different. And human beings are so confused that we cannot see who they used to be. We just look at the costume. Oh, that looks like an animal. That's a dog. That's a pig. That's a cow. And then we treat them as based on how they look. So we end up eating animals that used to be people, and worse still, people who used to be our relatives. Shr Fu says, if you want to know why there are calamities and wars in the world, Just listen to the sounds that come from a slaughterhouse at midnight. So from ancient times until the present, people have enjoyed benefiting themselves and sustaining their own lives by taking the lives of others. This is not just war. Shr Fu is talking about food. In life after life, people have been slaughtering and devouring one another. The hatred in the resulting meat stew is as deep as the sea. Human beings have taken the lives of the smaller and weaker creatures by force, ignoring the fact that all beings wish to live and are afraid of dying. Before those creatures die, their minds are overwhelmed by hatred and thoughts of revenge. So Shr Fu says there is no way to quell the feelings of enmity. So that's why Shr Fu says we get all these strange diseases. It is because of the karma, the killing karma that we have created before. So in the next slide, which will probably be the last one of the last few slides, Shr Fu says, if you think about what is actually happening when people eat meat, you'll see that it's really people eating people. It says, in light of this, you ought to consider whether the person being eaten, who has already taken the form of a cow, a sheep, a horse, or a pig, might have been related to you. So the Shurangama Sutra says sheep can become people again. So Shr Fu says if sheep can turn back into people, other animals should be able to do that as well. Shr Fu says we fail to recognize them because they have changed costumes and faces. Has it ever occurred to you that these pigs, cows, and sheep could be your old friends and relatives? In fact, they may very well have been your parents from last life, from this life, or from some life being beginningless eons ago. So there's this story. I will skip to the story right now. Shr Fu talks about the Venerable Patriarch Chu, who he was walking past a celebration in China. And when he walked past, because he was a Patriarch, I guess he had his 5 eyes open, the ability to see cause and effect. And he said, strange indeed, strange indeed. He says, the grandson marries the grandmother. The daughter eats the mother's flesh. The son beats a drum made with his father's skin. Pigs and sheep are sitting on the couch, and the 6 types of relatives are cooking in the pot. Everyone has come to celebrate, but I see it as real suffering. So what did he mean? He says, the grandson marries the grandmother. What he saw was that the couple getting married, the man marrying the woman in her past life was the man's grandmother. And just before, she was always worried about her grandson. You know, grandsons are always very precious. And at that time, the grandson was very young. And being a very good grandmother, she was really worried about who would take care of the grandson after she dies. So because of that last thought, she was reborn and in the end became his wife. So she can continue taking care of him. So the grandson marries the grandmother, and then the daughter eats the mother's flesh. The daughter was sitting down eating a dish of pork, and in this pig that she was eating used to be her mother from a previous life. And then the son beats a drum made with his father's skin. The drum was made from the skin of a donkey, and this donkey in the past life was the father of this son. And then pigs and sheep are sitting on the couch. So you have all the friends and relatives sitting around, and in their past lives they were animals. And he said the 6 types of relatives are cooking in the pot. And in turn, all the meat that was being consumed, that was being cooked, used to be their relatives, this family's relatives. So he says, people are thinking they're celebrating, but all he sees is real suffering. Yeah. Okay, so that ends. This is where we end the topic of food. Okay, I'm sorry if anyone has been think that it's a bit too extreme, but like I said, contemplation of food is not for everyone, okay? But for those of you who have had enough of what life has to offer, and you realize that no matter how much you eat, you still have to continue eating, and you want to use that as an opportunity to maximize your chances of going to the Pure Land, you know, and you have enough. You say, oh, I have enough. You know, every day I still have to eat, but I want to practice instead. Then now you understand how you can use the Buddha's instructions as a mirror to look at what goes on in your mind and your hearts when you eat. Okay. All right. So I have an announcement to make. So the reason why there was no class last week is because I received some news that I have to return to Malaysia by the end of this month, end of October. So previously, I was told not to leave because of my green card application. But that when the visa department gave me the advice, they didn't know that my application will take so long to get approved. At least the first stage will take so long to get approved. So because my first stage hasn't been approved yet, my current visa is going to end by end of this month. So that means I have to leave. And packing for this trip is a bit unusual because I really don't know how long I have to be away. So I'm not preparing for a 1 month or 2 month trip like I used to do before, but I think this might be at least a year or two. So there's a lot more things to consider. Also, it's going to be fun because when I return to Malaysia, what happens is I have to go into quarantine. Anyone who goes back to Malaysia has to go into quarantine. So you don't get to choose where you're going to go for quarantine. From the airport, the government, I think they put you in a bus or something, and from the airport they take you directly to a hotel, which they decide for you. You don't get to choose what hotel to go to, and on top of that, they make you pay for your stay, something like 150 ringgit. That's slightly less than 40. That's about 40 US dollars a day for your trip. I was speaking to some people earlier and they said, oh, that's like hell, you know, because you stay in your room, you cannot go out at all. You can't go out of your room, a small little room. And every day they bring you 3 meals. But to me, that is like paradise. It's like ideal. It's a very rare opportunity because it's very ideal. It's like a retreat, you know. So I have to say I am actually looking forward to the 2 weeks. Funny, it's funny to think. So what I'm going to do is, because I have other things to concentrate on, I am going to propose that I'm going to take a break from the classes, and especially during those 2 weeks, I'm not sure what the conditions would be like, and if I don't have to worry about preparing for the classes and just really concentrate on myself, that would be really good. So I'm going to propose that maybe, let me see, next week be the last class for a while, for maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And then through WhatsApp, I will announce again when we are going to hold the classes again, because from after the quarantine, then I have to get back to Malaysia, to Tempian, our men's monastery. I also have to make sure I have a stable, I have a way to get stable internet, and there are people who are helping to do that right now. And once that can happen, then I'll be confident of putting on a proper class. All right. In the meantime, we can always stay in touch during WhatsApp. Yeah. Okay. Anyone have any questions before we dedicate merit? Okay. If not, Let's do dedication. Oh, there's one thing which I have never done. I don't know why I've never thought about it. We should do it. We've never bowed to the Buddhas and Shr Fu at the end of every class. Yeah, I'm not sure how I have overlooked this. It's class 29 and only now I have thought about it. So today we'll bow. From now on, at the end of the classes, we'll bow. So Peggy says, can you announce the restart on the Berkeley website? Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we'll do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put my palms together and, oh, no, not Dharma requests. Okay, hold on. Okay, dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, everyone. So we'll see you next week. Okay, Amitabha. Bye-bye.